Hello, my friends. Chad Neighbors here of thechadneighbors.com, back at it with part 2 of my Steel Rift How to Play. In the previous video, we left off at the end of Phase 3, outfitting your forces. With that done, the forces are locked in, no more changes, and it's time to set the objective and prep the board. We are on to Phase 4, determining approach and mission objective. The approach is how the forces deploy, that is, the deployment zones on the board. In the core rulebook, there are 3 types of approach. Lateral, which is opposite corners, line breaker, which is alternating corners, and direct, which is the opposite table edges most of us are used to. Players roll off with a d6, and the winner chooses the approach. For all approaches, HEVs start closer to the board edges or corners, but onboard support assets can deploy further out, adding yet another wrinkle to your force selections. Note that the deployment distances for both HEVs and on-table support assets varies depending on the chosen approach. Make sure you read the fine print. For this example game, though, we rolled a direct approach, so HEVs deploy within 3 inches of opposite board edges. Next, we determine the mission objective for the game. Yes, Steel Rift has random objectives for every game, and they are security, seek and destroy, and recon. It's the expected fare, things like holding down board quarters, deathmatch, or reaching the enemy deployment zone while preventing them from doing the same. And mind you, that's just what's in the core rules. There are others in the expansion rulebooks. Though it's tempting to just pick an objective you and your opponent want to do, and you can, I urge you to resist that temptation. The randomness of the game objective adds a wonderful layer to force composition and outfitting that is inherent to the Steel Rift experience. No matter the objective, the goal is always to get victory points for achieving various criteria. If you do better or do more than your opponent in a turn, you'll get 1 victory point at the end of the turn. If it's a tie, no one gets VP. Games are always 5 turns with a 6th turn overtime in case of a VP tie at the end of the 5th turn. The mission we rolled today is Search and Destroy, basically a deathmatch. 1 VP is awarded to the player that destroyed the most enemy tonnage in a turn. So the approach is set, the objective is locked. Now we move on to Phase 5, Generation of Terrain. We're nearly ready to rumble, but we need something to fight over and around, and so we need terrain. The terrain, whatever it is and whatever it looks like, is categorized into 4 types: blocking, impassable, covering, and rough. Blocking terrain blocks line of sight on the board. Impassable is just what it says. It's impassable to ground movement, though flying or jumping units can move over it. Covering terrain does not block line of sight, but drawing line of sight through it reduces the power of an attack. Rough terrain is what you'd expect, and moving through it reduces movement ratings by half, meaning you can only move a ½ inch for every 1 inch of movement spent. Quick interjection right now to talk about line of sight and its interaction with terrain in Steel Rift. Make sure you check out these diagrams I've got on the screen right now. Line of sight is visualized as a cone, with the apex originating at any one point on an attacking unit's volume and drawn to both sides of the target across its entire volume. If the target is obscured in any way by covering terrain, meaning that cone is intersected by terrain, it's a 1 dice reduction to all attack pools. If it is partially obscured by blocking terrain, that is a 2 dice reduction to attack pools. And if the target is completely occluded by blocking terrain, no direct shot is possible. Note also, these modifiers do not stack. You always take whichever is better. In practice, an attacker may be able to shoot from cover while the target doesn't get any. Back to terrain placement. The manual specifies 8 pieces of terrain be placed, and it is recommended that at least 5 of those pieces be blocking and impassable. The rest can be rough, covering, or both. Players should agree on a selection of 8 terrain pieces and then, starting with the player that did not choose the approach, alternate placing the terrain on the board. Rules for terrain placement are as follows. They have to be outside the HEV deployment zones and no closer than 3 inches to any other piece of terrain. I trust it is apparent by now that terrain placement is yet another element that can help or hurt you, and another piece of that tactical puzzle. Once the terrain is down, whoop, breaking news, gents, the corporate mine drones have arrived. If you'll recall in my first video, my corporate force picked those as their off-table support asset. And now, after terrain placement, is when they go out. Each mine drone must be more than 12 inches away from the enemy deployment edge or corner and not within 6 inches of another mine drone. I am placing them to discourage likely cover points that the freelancer side might use. Now, with those scuttling menaces out and about, we move on to deployment. Starting with the player that chose the approach, players take turns putting units out in the appropriate deployment zones. On-table support assets are always deployed before HEVs for both sides. Once all units are out, it is at last time to commence hostilities and roll for initiative with 1d6. We'll get it going after a quick recap of the belligerents and what they are carrying. Pause the video if you need more time to inspect any of their loadouts. Okay, game start, turn 1. The freelancers win initiative and go first. The Daiko, a medium HEV, activates first. All units get 2 orders, in any order, per activation, and the Daiko is issued an engage or shoot order, laying its railgun on the corporate heavy across the board. Now is when we talk about the basics of ranged combat in Steel Rift. As mentioned previously, every weapon in the game has an engage rating, the base number of d6 dice it pushes on the target. This number of dice for every individual attack is adjusted, more or fewer, by the target's facing, intervening terrain, and factors like special defenses or upgrades. The final total is called the attack pool, which the targeted player rolls in what is called the defense roll. Each die in the attack pool is 1 potential point of damage, and the target may save against that damage by rolling a 4+ on each individual die. Simple as that. However, different classes of HEV get modifiers to that target number, making it easier or harder and representing the unit's evasiveness. Some upgrades and perks also affect that number. Light HEVs get a +1 to the rolled result. Heavies get a -1 and ultra heavies a -2. I think it's easier to think of the defense roll target number for each weight class as lights 3, mediums 4, heavies 5, and ultra heavies 6. It's a lot easier to damage the big boys even though they carry a lot more armor. Okay, back to the Daiko's firing solution. Checking LOS and angle of the target, it's a front shot. Shots to the sides and rear of a target get extra dice in the attack pool, +1 and +2 respectively. Railguns have an engage rating of 1, so 1 dice in the attack pool. Even though the bulwark is partially obscured by blocking terrain, that would normally get it a -2 reduction to the attack pool. It doesn't help here because you can never reduce any attack pool below 1 die, ever. The bulwark rolls 1 die for defense and needs a 5 to save since it's a heavy. It gets it, so no damage. If the railgun had inflicted any damage, the Daiko would then roll for the railgun's kinetic trait, something we'll see happen in just a second. The Daiko is now issued a move order running forward to close the gap with the corporate side. Move ratings are also standard by weight class in Steel Rift. 12 inches for lights, 10 inches for mediums, 8 inches for heavies, and 6 inches for ultra heavies. The Daiko is marked with an activated token since it has completed 2 orders. Now, the Ward, another medium, is up for the Corpos and is issued a move order, heading to the edge of the nearby crystal field, which is covering terrain. It then engages, lining up on the Daiko with a front shot. The Ward is at the very edge of the covering terrain, and so it does not draw line of sight through the terrain, and that means no reduction to its attacks. The Daiko is wide open. The ward opens up with its autocannon, engage rating 4. The Daiko is a medium HEV, rolls 4 dice, looking for 4 plus on each dice to avoid damage. The Daiko saves against 3 with a 5, 5, and 6. Note, a natural 1 on any defense roll always does damage, and so the Daiko takes 1 point of damage to its armor. He ducked the worst of it, but the autocannon has the kinetic trait 2, which the corporate player now rolls to process. The target number for kinetic in this case is 4 plus, since the weight of the shooter and the target is the same. Weight disparity between shooter and target incurs a bonus or penalty, respectively, on kinetic rolls. The ward rolls a 3, so kinetic, again, does not take effect. The ward now fires its missile with an engage rating of 4 dice. However, the Daiko has a defense, the submunitions weapon, which is a close-range gun that also grants it the flak trait. So long as it isn't redlined, flak reduces all attack pools from missiles and rockets by 2 dice. So the missile's attack pool is reduced by 2 to 2 dice total. The Daiko again needs a 4 plus to avoid damage, rolls 2 and fails both. That's 2 more points of damage to its armor. Missiles have the trait limited 3, so the ward marks off one of its missiles. 2 left in the launcher. The ward has moved, then engaged. That's its 2 orders. The activation is over, and it gets marked with an activated token. The Bridger medium is up next on the Freelancer force, and it wants to get the dual rotary cannons it carries into the fight as soon as possible. It moves up into the crystal field, braving the Corpo mine drone looking there for a better shot and chance to dash into optimal range next turn. Let's talk mine drones and their behavior real quick. These terrors may choose to activate if any enemy unit ends any order within 4 inches of them. That's right. As smart mine systems, the owning player can decide whether they go off or not. In this case, I do want to escalate the violence, and so the mine drone interrupts the Bridger's activation once its move order is complete. It attacks immediately with 4 dice and traits Armor Piercing 1 and Blast 4. Since mine drones have a special LOS when attacking, being drawn from the target to the target, in practice it means they always ignore any cover present. The mine drone explodes with 4 dice, and the Bridger needs 4 pluses, because it's a medium, to avoid damage. It only saves 1, and so that's 3 damage to its armor, nearly half stripped already. Also, 1 extra damage is additionally inflicted to its structure from the mine drone's AP rating of 1. If an armor-piercing weapon of any kind inflicts even a single point of standard damage, it also inflicts its AP rating separately directly to the structure of the target. This was a pretty nasty hit from one Spider Mine. I bet he'll be more wary next time. But the fun's not over. Any unit, friend or foe, within the range of an attack's blast trait in inches might take damage from it also. Blast inflicts damage to all units in range at the standard engage rating -1 dice. So in this case, the nearby Daiko has to roll 3 dice and is looking for a 4 plus to save. He saves all 3, nicely done, and a lucky break for him. The mine drone attack is concluded, the mine drone token is removed, and now it's back to the Bridger, as it has 1 more order left in this activation. Time to engage. The rotary cannons have trait short 12, meaning a 12-inch range. No shot, and so it pops off its laser at the ward across the board. Lasers are mean. They're armor-piercing attacks also. Lasers have an engage rating of 2, but this is reduced to 1 since there is intervening covering terrain. The ward is inside the bounds of the crystal field. Now, you know medium HEVs need a 4 to save, but this ward only needs a 3 because it has optic camouflage as an upgrade. That grants it a +1 to the defense roll results if the attacker is beyond 10 inches. The ward saves with a 4, so no damage. But since lasers also have the draining trait, the Bridger will get a red line token as it ends its activation. Back to the Corpos. Time for the Bulwark to go. You learned in the previous video that bigger HEVs get bigger, deadlier guns, and so they are a lot more fun. The bully moves up a bit, ready to maneuver next turn as needed. The Daiko is in the open and just too tempting, so it's time to make it rain. The Bulwark is packing heat with a particle cannon, 2 missile launchers, and a laser. The particle cannon is out of range, as it has trait Short 18, an 18-inch range. The missiles have unlimited range, though, and throw 6 dice each. Caution here. Efficiency-minded gamers will want to combine those 2 6-dice pools into one 12-dice pool to save a few seconds. Don't do it. You never combine your attack pools in Steel Rift. Ever. Cover bonuses and other factors that reduce the dice in the attack pool or cause effects to the target apply to each individual attack. You don't want to inadvertently cheat yourself or your opponent, as would happen in this instance. The first missile is away, but the normal attack pool of 6 is again reduced by 2 dice. Remember the Daiko's submunitions, giving it the flak trait. The Daiko rolls 4 dice to avoid damage, only drops 1 for 1 more point of armor damage. The next roll of 4 for the second missile, it saves 2 for 2 more points of armor damage. It's getting a little roughed up, but that could have been a lot worse without those submunitions. Then the Bulwark fires its laser. A heavy class laser pushes 2 dice, just like a medium one, but it has armor piercing 2. This might sting a bit. The Daiko rolls 2 dice on defense, gets a 3 and a 4, that's 1 failure. So that's 1 more point of armor damage, and 2 additional points straight to structure. That has now reduced its total structure by 25%, causing critical motive damage and a 1-inch reduction to move and jump ratings. In Steel Rift, critical damage effects occur on all HEVs at 25%, 50%, and 75% total structure loss, and they are all cumulative. The Daiko is slowing down a bit from the pounding it's taken. And with that, move, then engage, the Bulwark's activation is over. Is all this making sense so far? The combat system, as promised, is quick and engaging, no pun intended. Back to the freelancers. The light militarized loader activates and moves forward. It takes aim at the ward in the crystal field, but opts only to fire its autocannon. Its rocket rack has trait limited to, meaning just 2 shots for the entire game. The ward has a lot of cover, an intervening crystal rift, and it is, of course, still in the crystal field. Both pieces of terrain are considered covering, so it gets a 1 dice reduction to incoming attack pools. Clarification: intervening terrain reductions are not cumulative, and you always take the best one, blocking or covering, but never both. You never combine them. So covering terrain reduces the 3 dice attack pool of the light autocannon to just 2. The loader fires, and the ward rolls 2 dice to avoid damage, getting a 6 and a 1. He needed a 3 with the optic camo bonus, so that is 1 point of armor damage. Now, recall that autocannons have the kinetic trait, which means the loader rolls to see if it will process. Because the loader is a light HEV, and the ward is a medium, that size difference mechanic again, there's a -1 penalty on the kinetic roll result, meaning the loader needs to roll a 5 or 6 for kinetic to activate, instead of a 4, 5, or 6 if their weight was equal. The freelance player rolls a 2, no joy, so the ward keeps its footing and doesn't turn. That's it for the loader's activation. Back to the corporate employees with only 1 unit left to activate, the Buckler, a light. It's on the same side of the board as the Daiko, and that thing has already taken a beating, so it's going to try and finish it off. Just ahead of the Buckler, a patch of rough terrain that would half its normal movement rate through it. It's looking for a clear shot, and so opts to run 12 inches around that rough patch to draw a bead on and then engage the Daiko from the front. The Buckler is heavily armed for a light HEV, packing missiles, a shot cannon, and a laser. The shot cannon is basically a mech-sized shotgun, and it's out of range. It can only shoot 6 inches. It's got short 6. Light missiles do 2 damage, reduced to a minimum of 1 by the Daiko's submunitions again, and so he rolls 1 die. Daiko saves with a 5. Buckler wasted a missile on that shot, but he's got 2 left in the launcher. Buckler fires its laser next, 2 attack dice. The Daiko fails both for 2 armor damage and 1 structure, because of the laser's AP1. Painful. The Daiko is battered now, just 2 armor points left and nearly 50% structure loss. Recall that lasers are a draining weapon, and so the buckler ends its activation with a redline token. The last activation this round goes back to the Freelancers and their Scarab Light HEV. This is another heavily armed and speedy unit packing a railgun, shot cannon, and howitzer along with jump jets. If it wanted to, it could move for 12 inches and then issue the jump order for 10 more inches of movement in the same activation, crossing nearly the entire board, which is exactly what it's going to do, closing in on the corpos as quickly as possible while staying well away from that mine drone hiding behind the crystal rift. The Scarab must still be careful with its facing, too, because it does not want to expose its side or rear for the upcoming turn, just in case the corporation gets to activate first. Hopefully, this move will start putting pressure on the bulwark and drawing attention and fire off of the exposed Freelancers on the other flank. So, move, then jump. That's 2 orders. That's the end of the Scarab's activation and the end of the turn. Okay, end of turn 1 summary and cleanup. End of the turn, all activation and red line tokens come off. No units were destroyed, and that means neither side scores any victory points. Still a fairly eventful turn considering the Freelancers' Daiko took a lot of damage, but the corporate force is burning through their supply of missiles, and quickly. I trust you saw what a difference the submunitions made for the Daiko. That flak trade paid for itself 3 times over. As always, initiative for the next turn could prove pivotal. Let's see what happens. Turn 2. The corpos win initiative, and that can mean bad news written large for the Freelancers. The ward is activating first. It holds its ground in the crystal field, and since it is carrying a target designator, it is issued the lock-on order. Target designators are upgrades which allow units equipped with them to draw line of sight for other friendlies with smart weapons, but they also enable the lock-on order. Lock-on allows a unit to pivot and face any direction, and if the subsequent order is engage, it will then deprive the target of all rules for any of its upgrades or weapons for the duration of the engage order. In this case, it means the Daiko will not get the benefit of flak from its submunitions. First, the ward lights off the autocannon. 4 dice. Tough break. The Daiko takes 3 damage, stripping away its remaining 3 points of armor. Now the ward rolls for the autocannon's kinetic trait, looking for a 4 and gets it. Staggering under a stream of high-velocity shells, the Daiko must turn 45 degrees, left or right, chosen by the attacking player. The Daiko is turned left, counterclockwise, and that will give the ward a side shot for the follow-up missile attack. Because it's a side shot, that adds 1 dice to the attack pool, and so now the Daiko must roll 5 dice instead of 4, and it won't get that flak bonus. Its armor is already stripped, and it only saves on 2, so 3 damage straight to structure. This is a terrible outcome for the Freelancers because the Daiko has now taken 75% structure damage, meaning all 3 tiers of critical damage take effect. -1 to the movement rating, but also -1 to all weapon system damage profiles since it hit 50% structure damage. And worst of all, at 75% structure damage, it can now only issue 1 order during an activation. Devastating, just brutal, and with that surgical salvo, the ward ends its activation. In all likelihood, the Daiko, cratered, smashed, and smoking, is not long for the world. It can now issue only 1 order, meaning it can move or shoot, but not both. Might as well go out in a blaze of glory, right, my friends? It could opt to shoot back at the ward, still just inside its front 180-degree field of fire, but it opts instead to pop off some rounds at the buckler coming up the flank, hoping that scoring some AP damage from the railgun and its other weapons may be enough to severely damage the fragile light HEV. Only the Daiko's railgun and particle cannon are in range. Railgun first, normally 1 die engage rating, and it stays that way, despite the critical damage to weapon ratings. Any given attack pool can never be reduced below 1 die. Remember? The buckler is a light, and it saves on a 3+, and it rolls a 1. Oh no, that's 1 damage to armor and 1 damage to structure from the railgun's AP1. But something else happens. Light HEVs have a flaw called fragile internals, meaning every inflicted point of structure damage has a chance to snowball and cause one more point of structure damage. The buckler must now avoid rolling a 5 or 6 to stop that from happening, and it does with a 4. Phew. The Daiko rolls for kinetic, doesn't get it, and now shoots off a particle cannon, attack pool 3, because of critical damage. The buckler rolls to defend and gets one more point of damage on the buckler. Particle cannons have the draining and disruptive traits, so now the Daiko rolls for disruption on the buckler since it took damage from the particle cannon attack. Disruption will take effect on a 5 or 6, giving the target a red line token. A 3 doesn't get it, but since the particle cannons are also draining, the Daiko gets one of its own as it ends its activation. Not looking good there, fella. Viewers, if you have anything terribly important to say to the Daiko and its valiant pilot, I suggest you say it now down in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe while you're there. You should have seen this coming. The Daiko is on the ropes, and the corporate buckler is looking to capitalize. Leaving nothing to chance, it is going to close in and then unleash its full arsenal. The buckler leads with the shot cannon, a weapon that will show us some new traits, light and frag. Light trait means that 2 attack pool successes are needed to equal 1 point of damage, with remaining fractions being discarded. The frag trait is a good one. It penalizes the defense roll target number by 1, meaning it goes from a 4 to a 5 for the poor Daiko. If this doesn't do it, the buckler will follow up with the laser and finally its missiles as an insurance policy. In Steel Rift, you can fire any number of weapons you have, in any order, as part of your engagement. Being smart about this can help you save ammo or set up better attacks, like the Ward did last turn when it turned to the Daiko with autocannon fire to expose its side arc for the follow-up missile. Anyway, the Daiko has to roll 6 dice to avoid damage from the buckler's shot cannon, needs 5s or 6s to save. With an amazing defense roll, it only takes 1 point of structure damage. Remember, 2 successes equals 1 point of damage with light trait weapons. That's okay. Buckler's going to seal the deal with the laser, and unbelievable, the Daiko has saved against both. He is still hanging on with a single point of structure left. Okay, pressure's on. Buckler is launching a missile with a prayer. 2 dice, no flak this time, since the Daiko has a red line token, and he fails 1 for that final point of structure damage. With all of his structure gone, the Daiko is destroyed. I am sure the buckler pilot will say he planned it that way from the beginning, but he's now down to only 1 missile left in the launcher. Okay, that was seriously painful for the freelancers, and they've got some decisions to make. Should the Scarab do an end run and take some shots at the vulnerable back of the bulwark? Should the Bridger close in with the bigger threats, or try to pour some hatred on the buckler that just brought down his wingman? Decisions. The Bridger is indeed looking for revenge, all right, but not yet. He's got a plan. Instead, the Loader is going to swoop in to hopefully tie up the buckler, with the intention that the Bridger can move in right behind him on the next activation. If that occurs, that will activate the Freelancer's faction perk, Intimidation Tactics. Enemy units that have 2 or more HEVs within 6 inches will get a -1 penalty to all defense rolls for all attacks. That can be hideous. The Loader moves in, stays just clear of the mine drone's activation range, and right now he's going to shoot the autocannon and his rocket pack at point blank range. The buckler has to save against 3 dice for the autocannon, looking for a 3 to save, and it saves all 3 with a 5, 5, and 6. Now the rockets, 2 dice, and he saves against both of those. Lights in Steel Rift are very evasive, folks. The Loader, though, is also hit by the blast from his own rockets. They've got Blast 3, a 3-inch blast. If you'll remember from the last example, Loader saves on a 5, so no matter and no damage to him. Well, that might have been a grave mistake for the Freelancers. Let's see what the Corporation does. In the worst of all possible outcomes for the scrappy little Loader, the Bulwark activates and closes in, bringing its particle cannon in range. The Loader is going to be facing a fusillade. But checking the line of fire, the angle looks close. Is it a front shot or a side shot? Luckily, we don't have to guess because we've got this handy arc gauge that nestles onto pegs on the base. The Bulwark has a side shot after all, +1 to all attack pools for this engage order. Okay, let's do this. Godspeed, Brave Loader. Particle Cannon fires first. That's 6 dice standard engage rating, increased to 7 with the bonus from the side shot. Loader is a light, so he saves on a 3+. And a horrible defense roll, 5 damage. Now the Bulwark rolls for disruption and gets a 2, so no good. The Loader was given reinforced armor during outfitting, so he's still got 3 armor points left, which is a good thing because the laser is coming next. 3 dice. A better roll, saves 2, but that's still 1 point of armor damage and 2 straight to structure from the heavy lasers, AP2. That means 2 rolls are triggered for fragile internals, again because the Loader is a light HEV. Rolls a 3 and a 2, so that doesn't trigger. Lucky break, but he is still pushed past the 25% structure damage threshold, and so now gets a -1 to his move rating, -1 inch of movement. There's a lot more pain to come still. 2 heavy missiles at 7 dice in each adjusted attack pool. First one, Loader fails 3, that's 3 points of damage, stripping the armor, and 1 more blowing through to the structure. Roll for fragile internals, passes on a 2. Second missile from the Bulwark, 7 more dice. And that's a wrap. 3 more structure damage finishes off the Loader. The corporation has come to collect as the Bulwark blows away the Loader. His activation now over, and he gets a red line token for firing draining weapons. It is a dire situation for the Freelancers, but the fight rages on. The Scarab activates and goes for the gold with a backstab on the mighty Bulwark that just gunned down his brother in arms. Through careful maneuvering, he secures a shot in the rear quadrant of the Bulwark while staying out of the nearby ward's firing arc and also avoiding the lurking mine drone. This will contribute greatly to the Scarab's overall damage because he's going to get 2 extra dice in every attack, and the Bulwark, being a heavy, needs a 5+ to save against that damage. It's heavily armored, but those pips can go real fast in a situation just like this. First up, Scarab's Railgun gets 3 dice now because of the rear shot bonus. Big damage, 3 to armor, +1 straight to structure from AP. Howitzer is fired next, also gets 3 dice. Bulwark saves 2, so that's 1 more damage to armor. Since the ward is within 3 inches, it has to defend against the blast effect of the Howitzer. 1 dice and he gets it with a 4. Lastly, the Scarab's Shot Cannon, now pushing 8 whole dice, and the Bulwark must get 6 to save because of the frag trait. Another big fail that adds up to 3 points of damage. Remember, the Shot Cannon has the light trait. Light trait weapons need 2 attack pool successes to equal 1 point of damage. All in all, gentlemen, a savage attack from the little Scarab, deleting nearly 75% of the Bulwark's armor and even doing a little damage to its structure. A valiant maneuver that paid off, and the Scarab gets an activation token. You can now see why I say that positioning is everything in Steel Rift. Learn from this example for your own games. Now, the corporate force has already activated all of its units this turn, while the Freelancers still have 1 to activate. They've got a choice: pass and let the Freelancers activate again, or redline a previously activated unit to issue 1 more order at the cost of some structure damage. Normally, a unit can only redline if it doesn't already have a redline token. The only unit the corpos have without a redline token is the ward, but the boys in white and crimson have an ace up their sleeve: the Advanced Energy Management Systems faction perk. Once a turn, it allows the removal of a redline token from any unit prior to activation, and that is precisely what the Buckler is going to do. He's got a side shot on the Bridger and wants to prosecute it, and because that redline token is coming off, he'll get to shoot his laser again too. Normally, draining weapons can't be fired if the unit carrying them already has a redline token. And those of you smashing caps lock to scream about how the Bulwark should activate again instead so he can smoke check that Scarab, redlining only allows 1 order to be issued. The Scarab is out of the Bulwark's firing arc. He'd have to move, then engage to bring his weapons to bear. 2 orders. So that's a no-go. Same with the ward. The Scarab's bold play actually put him in a safer spot in this exact instance. So the Buckler will redline. First things first, he takes 1 structure damage for choosing to redline, but he's still got to roll for fragile internals, just like any other instance of structure damage. It's risky to push light HEVs in this way. He rolls a 4, lucky, no more structure damage, but this does still hit his first critical damage threshold, minus 25% structure loss, and so the buckler loses 1 inch of movement. Time to engage the Bridger with lasers and missiles because the shot can is out of range. +1 dice for the side shot, but -1 because the Bridger's in the crystal field and has cover. It also has reactive armor, which takes 1 more die away from missile and rocket attacks. So the buckler's missile is only pushing 1 die this time. Let's get that out of the way. Bridger rolls a 5 and saves, and the buckler is out of missiles. Laser shot is next with 2 dice. Bridger fails both with a 3 and a 2. That's 2 damage to armor, 1 damage to structure from armor piercing. The Bridger has now suffered critical motive damage and slows down to 9 inches. This ends the buckler's redline, and because he redlined, he will get a redline token. Note, no unit ever gets more than 1 redline token for any reason. The buckler doesn't get another redline token for shooting its laser also, for instance. Now, only all-out aggression will suffice for the freelancers, and the Bridger pilot knows that. He plows forward, out of cover, to bring the ward and the bulwark within range of his deadly twin rotary cannons. Rotary cannon has short 12, a 12-inch range, and the light trait. Each one also pushes 7 dice, but now, because the freelancers have 2 of their HEVs within 6 inches of the bulwark gets a penalty to that defense roll from intimidation tactics. He will need 6s to save. This could be a ton of damage. Let's light him up. The first rotary cannon at the bulwark, 7 dice, looking for 6s to save. 4 successes, that's 2 points of damage to armor. He's almost stripped. Repeat that again for the second rotary cannon. Look at all those 6s. He's got the luck of the devil, but he still takes 2 points of damage, scrubbing away the rest of his armor and doing 1 point of internal damage. The song is still playing, and the Bridger follows up with its laser. 2 dice. Snake Eyes means 2 points of damage to structure, plus 1 more to structure from armor piercing 1. This pushes the bulwark past the 50% critical damage threshold, so it's now slowed down and has a reduction to all of its weapon damage ratings. Look at how fast the tables turned here. Heavy HEVs deal out death, and they are tough, but they have a difficult time ducking incoming damage, as evidenced by this exchange. With the end of the Bridger's activation, the turn is over, and what a turn it was. A couple of bold plays by the freelancers might have changed the game, but we'll have to see who wins initiative in the next turn. If the freelancers get it, that bulwark is as good as dead from the bell. This turn, though, the corporation has it, destroying 50 tons of war material against the big fat 0 of the freelancers. The corporation gets 1 victory point. Now we are on to turn 3. Initiative roll, and oh my goodness, the corpos win initiative. And now it is time for that backstabbing scarab to pay the butcher's bill. The bulwark turns and stomps into base-to-base contact with the scarab, coming to grips with it for a smash order. Smash orders have an attack pool based on the size of the attacking unit. 3, 4, 5, or 6 for lights, mediums, heavies, and ultras respectively. The bulwark is a heavy and gets 5 dice. Smash attacks differ from shooting attacks and that they don't get any bonus dice for target facing. No help if you get into the side or rear arc. However, they do get bonus dice if the smash order was immediately preceded by a move, 1 dice extra, or a jump, 2 dice extra, throwing a little more weight into it, you might say. Melee weapons also add their melee trait rating to the attack pool, and the unit carrying them counts as 1 size bigger. They are really gruesome when going hands-on. The bulwark has no melee weapon and must make do with standard fists and feet, but it did move immediately prior to the smash attack, and so gets 1 extra attack dice for a total attack pool of 6. Here's the other big factor for smash attacks. The target number for the defense roll is based on size disparity between the attacker and defender, not the weight class of the defending unit alone. If there is no weight difference, the target number is a 4+. But for every size smaller the target is than the attacker, there is a -1 penalty to the roll, or vice versa. The Scarab is a light, the Bulwark is a heavy, so that means 2 degrees of difference, and the Scarab now needs a 6 to save against being stuffed in a locker. Much easier for the Bulwark to hit compared to the usual 3 save a Scarab enjoys against shooting attacks. This does not bode well for the Scarab and its pilot. Not one bit. And even worse, because smash attack damage applies in an alternating fashion. 1 point to armor, 1 point to structure, repeating until all damage is applied. Now the Scarab player rolls 6 dice and only saves 1 of them. That's 5 points of damage, divvied up into 3 to armor and 2 to structure. That's half of its armor and structure both gone in a single attack. But he's not out of the woods yet. He's got to make a fragile internals roll for both points of structure damage. This could get even worse, and it does with a 5 and a 6. 2 more points of structure damage that destroys the Scarab. The Bulwark has broken it in half with 1 terrible blow, a single smash attack. If you're going to come for the king, you had better not miss, and this exchange goes to show how deadly and decisive smash attacks can be in Steel Rift, especially against lighter units. With that devastating response, the Bulwark has concluded its activation. Dear friends, I'm going to level with you. It's looking grim for the freelancers. The Bridger will activate, but he's the only one left, and he's facing down 3 Corp HEVs, even though the Heavy is barely functional at this point, with just 3 points of structure left. The Bridger has 3 of 8 armor points left and 4 of 6 structure points left, along with reduced ground speed from critical damage. A big salvo or even a couple of nasty AP hits, and he is down for the count. It's time to do something bold, something a little crazy, and most importantly, time to get revenge for all of his slaughtered friends, blood for blood. He stands his ground, opening up with the first rotary cannon aimed at the badly damaged Bulwark. With a little luck, he can finish it off with 1 burst and shift fire to another target. The Bulwark has to roll 7 dice to defend against the rotary cannon, and looking for 5s and 6s. Intimidation tactics no longer applies. No joy, not even a single save nonetheless, and that roll breaks down to 3 points of structure damage, finishing off the work that the Scarab started. The Bulwark drops and explodes in a blizzard of tracers. Now the Bridger shifts fire with the remaining rotary cannon to the nearby ward, dropping 1 dice from the attack pool for the cover it has, and then 1 more because it is a secondary target. If you change targets during an engage order, it is a -1 to the attack pools of all subsequent weapon systems. So this rotary cannon is only pushing 5 dice now. The ward is looking for 4s up to save. He no longer gets the benefit from optic camo because the Bridger's too close. 1 save and the remaining 4 dice equal 2 points of armor damage. Not bad, considering the rotary cannon will drop those fractional successes anyway. The ward is still in very good shape, not even half stripped, and with structure undamaged. You might have remembered the Bridger has a laser to fire to, but he's not going to. Lasers are draining weapons, remember? And they'll give the firing unit a redline token. The Bridger, if he survives the next Corpo activation, will have an opportunity to redline and act again, but only if he doesn't already have a redline token. We'll have to see what happens. In any case, that was only his first order. He still gets another one, and now he's going to move. Ideally, the Bridger would put his back against cover so he doesn't get surrounded, but with a mine drones waiting nearby, he doesn't have too many options. The best he can hope for is to get out of the ward's immediate field of fire, get distance from the mine drones, and try to stay in range in case he gets that red line opportunity. He dashes for the nearby rough patch and hopes for the best, ending his activation. The ward activates now, seeking to close the account. Issuing the lock-on order again, he pivots in place to bring weapons to bear on the Bridger, and the Bridger's missile-stopping reactive armor will now be negated on the following engage order. The ward's missile is going to push its full damage on this attack roll, but line of sight still draws through that crystal field the ward is in, so the Bridger will get a -1 to all those incoming attack pools, or at least for the missile and the other weapons. The ward opens up with the autocannon first. That's 4 dice reduced to 3, and the Bridger needs 4s up to save, only dropping 1 for 1 point of armor damage. The ward is now rolling for kinetic, looking for a 4, 5, or 6, and gets it with a 6, turning the bridger 45 degrees clockwise and exposing its side. Now those following attacks will get 1 dice back. The ward launches its missile, 4 dice. Bridger takes 2 more points of damage, stripping the last of its armor. It's not over yet because the ward uncorks its shot cannon. 8 dice, traits, light, and frag. Bridger needs 5s now. Wow, only 2 points of damage net, and the Bridger has still got 2 points of structure left. Critical damage will reduce all of its weapon damage values by 1, but he is still in the fight, and fight he shall. The corporate force still has unactivated units, but the freelancers do not, and because the Bridger doesn't have a redline token, he may choose to redline to take 1 more order in exchange for that 1 point of structure damage, pushing his machine to the limit. One thing to unpack here. The freelancers took the reckless piloting faction perk, which would normally permit the Bridger to instead take 2 points of structure damage to get 2 orders when redlining instead of 1. But because the Bridger only has 2 structure points left, doing so would destroy it, and accordingly, he cannot choose to do that. No matter, because the ward is still in his front 180-degree field of fire, and he's about to light it up like he's born on the 4th of July. Both rotary cannons and a laser going at the ward. The rotary cannon has been reduced to 6 dice due to critical damage, and it will drop 1 more because of the intervening cover. The ward rolls 5 dice, needs 4s, and that's 1 point of damage. Second rotary cannon, 5 dice, 1 more point of damage to armor. Laser now, 1 dice, and that turns out to 1 point of armor damage plus 1 point of damage to the ward's structure for armor piercing. Not quite as damaging as the Bridger would have liked, but a respectable effort. That is it for the Bridger's engagement, and he gets a red line token. No more of those shenanigans this turn. Back to the corporate side, the buckler is activating. He's still in fair shape, but that motive hit has slowed him down a bit, and so he can only move 11 inches. Time to go for the gusto and finish off these freelancers. He is closing in. The buckler engages, leading with his shot cannon. 6 dice. He needs 2 successes for 1 point of damage. Bridger is saving on 5s up because of the frag trait and tallies 2 points of damage. Only 1 dice saved. A single success doesn't count, but it is still enough to cut down the brave freelancer in his prime. And that's it. Wrap it up. The freelancers are tabled at the end of turn 3, and to rub salt in the wound, the corpos get the victory point. The Bridger and the Scarab total 50 tons. The Bulwark, powerful though it was, totaled only 40. And that is game, set, match. The corporation wins. Now, dear friends, you know pretty much everything you need to know to play Steel Rift yourself. There are a few traits like Smart and Edge cases that weren't demonstrated because they didn't come up. I showed you guys events as they actually unfolded according to legit roles. But if you've got the manual, those few things will not be an issue. It's all as simple as the stuff I've showed you here. Crunchy though it was, this was only a basic, small game of Steel Rift. There are many more on and off table support assets, specialized melee weapons and upgrades to talk about. There are teams, which are specialized formations in your force, complete with their own perks, and I didn't even touch on secondary agendas, which are extra player selectable objectives that are alternate ways to score VP in every game. And then there's loads more list building fun you can have with some 24 different faction perks. Beyond that, Steel Rift has rules for campaigns, ace pilots, and a whole lot more. If you want to see more about any or all of that, you've got to like this video and light it up down in the comments to let me know. I'm not going to start the practice of like gating videos that you guys want to see, but this one took a devastatingly long time to make, and so I only want to follow up on it if you all are truly thirsty for more Steel Rift. Let me know. It really is a stupendous system, gents, and I cannot recommend it enough if you want a micro-scale mech battler. That's all I've got for you for now, but rest assured, I've got more videos in the works, even as you listen to this one. Thank you all so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, remember, have character, don't be a character. Good night, my friends.